Now I'd like to demonstrate vacuum filtration. Oftentimes, in the organic laboratory, we'll be confronted with a solution that has solid particles in it and liquid. And our goal would be to separate the solid from the liquid. Sometimes we want to save the solid, as in a recrystallization. Other times that solid is maybe a drying agent that we want to filter and get rid of, keeping the clear, clean liquid. And so we use what's called a vacuum filtration setup to do that. The first thing we look for is a vacuum flask. You see that has a sidearm and it's shaped much like an Erlenmeyer flask. You'll notice the glass is a little thicker because we put it under vacuum and we want the glass to stand up to the added pressures, or the reduced pressure inside and the atmospheric pressure outside. We'll want to clamp that flask in a 3-prong clamp using our ring stand. We'll get that to be level. We're going to attach the flask using a rubber tube to a vacuum aspirator in the sink. So one end of the rubber tube attaches to the sidearm. The other end of the tube attaches to our vacuum aspirator in our sink in the fume hood, and that will allow us to pull a vacuum on this flask. The next thing we need is a Buchner funnel. And you'll notice that it has 2 parts. And the top cup-shaped part has holes in it that will allow the solvent to drain through. The rubber stopper on the Buchner funnel should fit securely in the neck of our filter flask. If it goes all the way through or doesn't fit about halfway in, you should find a new flask that has a narrower neck or a new funnel with a thicker black rubber stopper. The next thing we need is a piece of filter paper that is sized appropriately for our Buchner funnel. That filter paper will fit right over the holes in our funnel, and that makes the funnel a lot better at filtering out the solid. So we want to turn on the vacuum, turn on the faucet that the hose is attached to. That's going to draw air through our funnel, through the filter flask, out the tube, and down the faucet. Next, we want to take some pure solvent that's in our flask, pure solvent that's of the same solvent that's in the flask. Here I have a sample of water. I'm going to wet the filter paper so it sticks to the filter. That way the filter paper will stick down onto the plastic funnel and it will not float on top of the solution that I'm about to pour on top of it. Remember, we use the same solvent that's in our flask. Next, I'm going to pour my liquid into the funnel. I want to keep the liquid in the middle of the funnel with the goal of making a small pile of solid right in the middle of that filter paper. That way the solid has no chance to leak around the filter paper. Oftentimes, you'll need to use a spatula to encourage the solid to get into the funnel. Oftentimes a little elbow grease is useful here, but don't spend 5 hours trying to clean out your flask. A little bit of product loss in this case is expected. We don't want to spend too much time trying to collect every last crystal. Once the flask is mostly clean, I'll take some cold solvent, again the same solvent that was in this flask. In this case it was water. I'm going to take 1 or 2 squirts, 1 or 2 milliliters of the cold water to rinse my flask. That will help collect the rest of the crystals that are remaining there. So now this flask is cleaned out, at least to my satisfaction. It's not perfectly clean, but we've only lost a few crystals. Next we'll take some cold solvent, again water in this case, and we'll wash the crystals that are in this flask. we want to use the smallest amount possible so we don't dissolve all of these crystals. So 1 or 2 pipettes worth of water. I'm just going to drip it onto the crystals, and that will wash away the dirty liquid that the crystals had been in before, leaving behind pure water that can dry or evaporate in the crystals, leaving behind no impurities. And so now we see that we're still dripping a little bit out of the funnel. We'll let this sit under vacuum for a few minutes until those drips stop. Once they're done, we can disconnect the rubber tubing, leaving the vacuum on, and then we turn off the aspirator. We disconnect the tubing first so that the vacuum that's generated in this flask doesn't draw dirty water up and through the tube and into the flask. We don't want to contaminate the liquid that's in here because, as I said before, sometimes our goal is to keep this clean liquid and throw away the solid that we filtered. Today I want to keep the solid, but I still don't want to contaminate the liquid because that will cause more waste to be generated. And the more waste we make, the more expenses we have as a laboratory. And so now we can see the solid has collected on the filter paper. There's no liquid left. It's still damp. And you can then disconnect this cup, place the cup in your drawer until the next laboratory period, at which time we will have dried solid in our filter funnel.